Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to today's episode of Talking Point. I'm your host, Saeed Niaz Ahmed. With us in our studios today are two young ladies, Romain Maharaj and Ruana Maharaj. They're from United Kingdom Thalassemia Society. Welcome to the show, Romain and Ruana.
Thank you.
How are you today?
We're great, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Since you are here for the first time on this show, to Talking Point, I would like you to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself. I know that you are Executive Director of Thalassemia Society and you are the Vice Chair. Okay, Romain.
So I am the Executive Director of the Society, which has been existing for the last 44 years. It was formed by parents and family members to support patients and people affected or infected by thalassemia major, which is an inherited blood condition. You know, our charity is located in Southgate, and we cater to the different communities affected by the disorder.
It's great that it's been in operation since for the last 40 years. That's
44,
great.
1978.
Oh, great. Ruana.
So I've been involved with the society from the age of 14. Yes. I have thalassemia major
you can't
myself.
say for 44 years.
No, well, not yet. I have some time to go. But I have the condition myself, and I'm trained as a psychologist, and I help people with the condition. So some of our work is to work with families, but also work with medical professionals and parliamentary and MPs to try to advocate for change and to ensure that, you know, our patients are well supported with the condition.
Well, I read somewhere that this disease or this disorder is passed through the genes, so it's within the family.
It is.
So, who established this UK Thalassemia Society? Is it for 44 years?
It was established by parents of children back in the 60s. When a child was diagnosed, the prognosis was really poor. The parents were told that the children would not live past 5 years, and they had to keep them as comfortable as possible. Parents did not accept this, and they decided to get together and form the society. It started off in a parent's house, and then it went from there. You know, it grew on strength as they went along. But they were fighting for change and fighting to get somebody interested in doing the research to treat the children that were being diagnosed at that point.
But I would have thought that medical science has developed enough for people to understand, or particularly the NHS to understand that yes, there is something like thalassemia or the lack of a particular protein.
So back then they didn't know much about it at all, and due to migration the NHS were starting to see a population of kids who had this hematology sort of condition that affects the red blood cell, but they didn't understand what was happening and what was needed. So blood transfusions is what all they kind of knew about that they needed to sustain their life. But things like iron overload and those kind of things, heart failure, the doctors were unsure about it. They didn't understand how when you have a blood transfusion, the iron stores and you develop kind of cardiac problems and diabetes and all those things. So the patients were dying by 5 to 8 years because of all these comorbidities and secondary conditions. So our society, and that's something I'm grateful for because I'm alive, and so is a lot of people around the world, they were the ones to put in research and fund research so that people learned about the condition and learned how to treat it.
Well, can you describe briefly what is thalassemia?
So thalassemia is a blood condition that affects the hemoglobin protein, which is the oxygen carrying component.
Why does it happen?
In red blood cells. So it came about as an evolutionary response to malaria, which I think is quite fascinating. So in malaria-prone regions of the world, so like the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, the Middle East, Asia, Southeast Asia, where malaria was very prevalent, people were dying of the disease and the virus. And with evolution, the human body, which is fantastic, adapted, and that's how it started to produce smaller red cells. And people with the trait, they have some protection against malaria. And that's how the population was living past malaria in those areas, which I think it's amazing. Unfortunately, people think about it as being bad blood, but if you have the trait, you have some protection against malaria. So it's kind of a superpower in a sense.
You say malaria and other conditions, you see, but then again we say it is passed through the genes.
So yeah, so it was a mutation that happened in the cells, and that caused, so you know your genetic code and how you make red blood cells, and there's like a specific sort of enzyme and a code that adapted to make smaller cells. So with thalassemia, people with the trait have smaller and less cells, so you'll hear things about being anemic. Yeah. Lots of people in our community will say, well, I'm anemic.
Yeah, but that means lack of blood.
But that means a lack of red cells. And it could be because of thalassemia trait. People think it's iron deficiency without doing testing, and most of the times it's actually thalassemia.
I mean, there are some families that some people with the trait, even though they carry the trait, they have high hemoglobins as well. So there's no evidence to show that they do carry the trait, which is why it's invisible. And the problem comes in when two parents, when the father and mother decides to have a child, and they pass that trait on to the child, then the child ends up with a full-blown condition like Rana.
So there's no, it can't be cured. There's treatment, but it can't be cured.
So right now, it can be cured with a bone marrow transplant. And I can tell you in the NHS in the UK, only 10% of our patients, so we have 1,500 patients or so in the UK, in England, and only 10% of them are eligible for a transplant because you have to have a matched donor. And that's really difficult in our communities. There are things like gene therapy, but because of our small numbers, we didn't meet the criteria to get that funded in the NHS, so we've lost that.
Right.
But so bone marrow transplant is the only curative measure that we currently have right now, and we're working to get others. But for the majority of patients, it's having lifelong treatment every day and having blood transfusions every 2 weeks for the rest of their lives.
Every 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's quite difficult. It's kind of, if you think about putting petrol in a car,
yeah.
I started having blood transfusions from the age of like 4 months old. I'm 33 to like now, and I've had them ever since. And at some points I had it every 4 days because I was that unwell.
But when you say that this passes through the genes, this disorder, is it 100% correct that it will be passed on to your children?
So one in each parent is a 1 in 2 chance. It's either you give the gene or you don't give the gene.
So if you think about two parents who are carriers, 50% so in each pregnancy, 50% will be the child could be a carrier. 25% chance is that you give both of them give 2 of those genes, and you can be a full-blown patient like I am with a severe condition. And in 25% chance, they don't get any trait. But I think the main thing for us is that you have lots of people having children and both are carriers and they don't know. My parents didn't know. And it's only when the child's diagnosed that they find out they were carriers, and this is what's happened. But so for a child to have it, both parents need to pass it on.
Very interesting. Thalassemia is caused when body does not make enough of a protein called hemoglobin.
Yeah.
Can we make the body? Is there enough research work done in that direction?
So that's what gene therapy is trying to do. It's trying to fix that mutation in the gene so that the body starts producing it. But my body, for example, doesn't have that genetic code to make hemoglobin. Yeah. There's nothing I could eat, there's nothing I could do apart from have blood transfusions. But unless there's gene therapy to actually go in and correct those cells, there is nothing that can be done because I don't have that, like, say it's a special passcode.
Yeah.
I don't have that to make those cells. So my body, basically, with hemoglobin molecules, you have something called alpha globin chains and beta globin chains. And you need both of them to make hemoglobin. I have the alpha, but because I have beta thalassemia major, it means I have no beta globin chains. So it's like you're putting some of the recipe in, but not all of the ingredients. Yeah. And that's essentially, so I'm making cells that gets destroyed. It doesn't, exactly. That's exactly what it is. So the cells that I make die very quickly, and that's why you have to have blood transfusions every 2 weeks.
Right. We have been talking about hemoglobin. How important is red hemoglobin for the blood cells?
Well, hemoglobin is what we can thank for being able to breathe. So the oxygen, hemoglobin acts like a car, and the oxygen holds on it, it fits in, and then so the red blood cell then transports it throughout the body. So without hemoglobin, essentially you don't have oxygen going through your cells, and you can die from that. So that's why we need it.
So it does not matter what we eat and what we do. We have to have the treatment for the...
Well, so if you're a carrier, it does matter sometimes what you eat. So we say that people should eat very healthy. They should have iron. They should have things like that. But if you have the full-blown condition, there's nothing that I can eat. I mean, you have to eat healthy, but there's nothing I can eat that will help me produce the cell because I don't have it.
Right. Let's get back to your organization, the UK Thalassemia Society.
Yes.
Now, I can see look at the table and you see there's so much of magazines and literature that you have produced. How do you reach the audience or the target population?
Well, we work throughout the communities as best as we can, trying to reach through different contacts like yourself. This has been a remarkable, to be able to get the message out. We do the literature, and we actually do we start off with it as a in English, and then we translate it into different languages.
Right. This is in Bengali.
Yeah, this one is actually in Bengali.
Okay. Can we show it on the screen, please? Yes.
So we have done quite a lot of them. Should I?
Yeah, this one's in Bengali. But we've done. We try to do it to make sure and breach that kind of language barrier, because sometimes lots of our families don't speak English as a first language.
Right.
So we need to make sure that the information we provide is relatable to them and they understand.
Right.
We work very closely with the NHS, so when there's new families, they introduce us to them, and then we support families that way. And we work with like local support groups, local community centres, anybody that wants and has people to refer to us. We work with anybody to make sure and help the family.
Right. I see that you've got 2 in Bengali and the rest are in English, is it?
Yes, we have. We're now currently working on translating everything into the various languages. So we've done Arabic, we've done Punjabi, Bengali,
Urdu.
So Urdu. So you see, we do our.
And they're all on our website. So you can also go and find these versions on the website, and even with the English, you can translate it online. So our website is www.ukts.org.
So you are working to inform the people, the public, the general public about what is thalassemia and what to do.
So that is one of the things we do. So we do the general public, we do people who with the condition and families, we do the healthcare professionals. So we teach and we do lectures to teach them about the condition, and we also do parliamentary stuff. We've met the royal family, so we do lots of advocacy in those kind of circles to try to get general knowledge about the condition out much more. And we fund research, so we fund gene therapy trials and all those things.
Great. Is there any particular community, I mean, you have printed in Bengali and you said that in Urdu and Arabic and all that. Is there any particular community that is more prone to this particular disorder?
So I would say, in the UK there was lots of migration, and the first patients that they saw were from Greek and Turkish because of that, and now it's the majority of patients come from British Pakistan or British Bengali background. But the prevalent area, like the most prevalent areas, are the malaria regions of the world. So the Caribbean, North Africa, the Middle East, Mediterranean, Asia and Southeast Asia. Those are the areas that are quite prevalent with thalassemia. But you also have kind of Northern Europe. So I think 1 in 1,000 people from a Northern European background have a trait. And in our communities it's a lot. So I think it's 1 in 7 people carry the trait in our background. So this is not
prevalent. A waterborne disease like the malaria or something. See, this is not passed on through the mosquito bites.
So it's not passed on. So unlike malaria, it's not caused by a virus. This is caused by genetics. So it's nothing to do. You're not infected. You're not contagious. It's nothing like that. It's passed on just like the color of your eye and your hair color that you get from your parents. That's how it's passed on. So it's not, it's not a virus.
Yeah, but the genetics works in very strange ways too. See, the color of your eyes could be 5 generations down. It could be completely different, and you'd be baffled.
Yeah, but this one comes directly from parents. It would come from grandparents. However, it's passed down from the parents. But for a child to have it, both parents, like my parents, both of them have the trait. and that's how I inherited it.
Right. What other things that you do, your organization does normally? I mean, like to make it more, your work more popular, bring it to the people, what you're doing, and also to raise funds.
So we're doing a lot on social media because that's how we're reaching our younger audience. And I don't even want to say younger because everybody uses social media now.
Yep.
And you know, we have to do lots of like graphic things. We have to change our language and how we explain to people, because I mean, my attention span as a young person is decreasing, I think, as I get older. So we try to make things more relatable. In terms of, you know, we fundraise to help the organization.
Okay, we will talk about raising funds and other things that you do after this very short break, and then when we come back, we'll pick up the thread. Okay. Thank you, viewers, for being with us, and we hope that you're enjoying the show as much as we are in producing it. We'll be back soon after this very short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Just before the break, we were talking to one of the guests today about what they are doing to raise funds and to increase the awareness in the general public about thalassemia. And we were talking about how this disorder can be treated. This treatable disorder that can be well managed with blood transfusion. And then there is, you have this chelation treatment.
Iron chelation treatment.
EDTA something. This is a therapy. What is this therapy?
So with the blood transfusions, I'll start with that. With the blood transfusions, you tend to have it every 2 to 3 weeks from infancy, so 4 months old. But because we can't make hemoglobin, the iron that we receive in the blood transfusions, that can kill us. So, you know, from a young age, I was in heart failure, I have diabetes, lots of things happen. So this iron chelation therapy, it's a therapy used to remove the iron from the blood that causes all of these things. So it's given in different ways. One of them is by a subcutaneous injection, so that's an injection you wear under the skin, and it's given over 12 to 24 hours, 7 days a week. So that's one of the therapies I'm on. So I have this pump, it's attached to a pump, and it goes over 24 hours, 7 days a week. Some of the other treatment are tablets, so you have capsules you take 3 times a day. One of them is called ferrochrome. One of them is called XJ that you take twice a day or once a day, but it's very rigorous treatment, and that's just to manage the iron overload, blood transfusions, and then when you develop the other conditions like heart failure and all these things, you have a myriad of other medication that you take.
What is the general effect on the body of the person who is receiving this treatment?
So in terms of with the blood transfusions, you have the iron overload. So, like I said, I had heart failure at like 14. Diabetes, you have problems with your hormones, so you don't grow. As you can see, I'm not very tall, and that's due to the fact that the iron damaged some of my maturity glands and those hormones. You have osteoporosis. So at 16, I had severe osteoporosis. My bones were comparable to somebody who's 89 years old when I was 16. I don't even want to imagine what it is now. You have lots of like bone and joint pain. Your skin gets discolored and a lot darker because of the iron overload. So it's really difficult. I think sometimes we make it look easy, but you know, having to have treatment like blood transfusions every 2 to 3 weeks, I miss so much of school. You have lots of appointments, lots of scans. It takes quite a lot of your day-to-day life, and the treatment, it takes a lot of my day to facilitate all these treatment, and I'm not always very good at taking it as I should.
Is this treatment or treatments for this disorder, are they common throughout the world, or this is just because we are in the West?
I wouldn't even say in the West. I think in the UK we're very fortunate. So, you know, we have a voluntary blood service. We don't have to worry where our blood comes from, whereas, and I can tell you, being in the Caribbean, every unit of blood we had to get somebody to donate that blood. So in other parts of the world, they don't have access to the medicine. They have to pay for it, whereas with the NHS, we have medication here. We don't worry about our blood transfusions. But in other parts of the world that we've been to, they don't have any of that. So life expectancy in most of the world is 15 years old. Some countries it's 20 if they're lucky. But because they have iron overload and they don't have those medications that I told you about, they die by 15, 16.
So as a charity, what we have seen is that I get daily emails from countries, different people, trying to get us to help them get treatment, get access to treatment, or even to suggest.
You get requests from this country?
We get from all over the world, you know, for help, asking for help to do the bone marrow transplant, which is the only curative treatment available now at this point. And you know, they ask for help getting medication, access to medication, getting blood, trying, you know, to see how they can better their children's lives, because it's very difficult if you don't have treatment for your child. You know, you know that you do.
It's very distressing.
It is.
But
it is
when
on
you said bone marrow is curative, so
Yes.
it does cure.
It
It
does
is.
cure, but and everything, it does cure, but it's not 100% cure in lots of, in some cases. It works really well for some people, but not every human is very different. And to get that match, it is very difficult.
I know, because I did a program about a child, see, about I think 4 or 5 year old child, see, and the parents from Bangladesh, see, they're still trying because they can't get the matching donor.
And that's exactly how it is with us. It's really difficult. So we try to get people to go and get tested so that they can see if they match somebody
Right.
and to help cure them. But it's also very expensive. I don't know what it costs around the world, but like in Italy, where lots of those treatments were done, it was like $1 million US to do it. Lots of these countries can't afford to do it. It's a lot cheaper now, but it's still very costly. So
It's not made in China.
No, and the important
that
thing
would be
to
easy.
remember, it's also a rigorous, very harsh treatment for the child to go through.
and
Yes.
the
You know,
parents.
because and the parents living with it, because the child has to go through an intensive chemotherapy to kill the cells in the body and then replace it with the donor cells and hope that it matches and it grows.
And then the thing with transplant is that you can reject it, like how you have organ rejection. You can
Right.
reject that, and it's very complicated. But when it works really well. So we have lots of families that it worked for, and they have been transfusion independent. We have some that it didn't work. We've lost some patients, so it's really difficult. But we get requests from Bangladesh all the time because blood donation is a problem there too. So lots of our, you know, the people that contact us, they don't have any means of getting blood.
True.
And the parents will say, like, my child is going to die if they don't have blood. And, you know, we have to...
There they give you the piece of paper, this is prescription, go and get the medicine, see,
Yeah.
and then get blood, see, and then they have to run around
Yeah, and
the
it's
right
expensive.
group of blood, see, and then ask, or if they have to buy, they do not know if it is not contaminated.
Exactly, and we've had that. I mean, in the UK, we had the infected blood inquiry that's currently going, it's just completed, where they weren't testing the blood and they were transfusing people with lots of different types. Luckily, we don't have that situation here anymore. But the rest of the world, where they're not, it's very expensive to test the blood. Patients are getting hepatitis B and C. You in rare cases get HIV, and it's a really serious thing.
You also have an International Thalassemia Day every year. You celebrate.
It's May 8th,
May 8th.
and it's celebrated throughout the world. What we do in the UK for it is that we tend to highlight thalassemia to try to get it on the media and different platforms. We have patrons in the different communities who would give messages. And what we find is, especially if you have celebrity patrons, people tend to listen to them a little bit more.
Yep.
So it helps to spread the word for people to understand, look, this is not a condition I should be hiding. I should understand how it works so that I can prevent having a child with it. Because I can tell you, if you have a child with the condition, and it changes your life totally, you change your focus, you change how you can do things. You can't plan as you would want to, because you have to cater for the extra things that come with having to deal with transfusions and everything else.
What happens when you travel, like you go on holidays?
So you can only travel for a certain amount of time. So and that, so I recently went away and I could only travel for sort of 10 days because I had to come back and have transfusion. So that puts you can't go and work abroad. You have to be very mindful of how you're doing, how you're feeling. You can't get health insurance because of all the kind of, so it's really difficult. And that's the thing, if you have a curative option, you don't need transfusions, you can travel the world and do things, but it really restricts your ability to go abroad.
Is this treatment available to all patients? I mean, like, you don't have to buy it.
So in the UK, once you're a resident, no, it's available on the NHS. You do have to buy your prescriptions for your medication.
Yeah.
If you're over 18 and you don't have certain kind of like diabetes and things. But so we're very fortunate in the UK, but unfortunately the rest of the world, that's not the case.
Well, I know that we have traveled some bit, but not too far. What does thalassemia do to a person? I mean, how it's a person suffering from thalassemia and a person not suffering from thalassemia. What is the difference? I mean, can you identify him? What are the symptoms? How does he behave?
So if you're talking about somebody with thalassemia trait, or thalassemia minor, that person might be, so like my parents, that they would be slightly anemic, but but it doesn't really cause any symptoms. It doesn't show that much. They might feel tired, but you put that to life. Like, I'm stressed and I didn't sleep, but some people are a little bit paler, they're exhausted, they'll have like anemia. So having the trait is not, you're still healthy. It doesn't, you don't have a condition. Someone like me,
can they take part in normal physical activities?
They can, and like, we have Bollywood actors who have thalassemia minor, like Amitabh Bachchan. We had this very famous footballer, he's Italian, Zidane. He has thalassemia trait too.
He's French, I think.
Is he French or
Algerian
Italian?
French.
I'm not great with football. I'm more of a cricket girl.
He's French, yes.
I'm more of a cricket girl. But he has thalassemia trait. So you can be fine, but somebody like me, if I didn't have treatment, I would have died by 8 months old. I wouldn't have lived as long as I have. So, when I need a transfusion, I'm very anemic. I'm in like lots of pain, breathless, stop eating. It's it's quite a lot until I have transfusions, and then you start feeling better and whatnot. But then.
Well, all this time you have been talking about yourself. See, you don't suffer.
No, I carry the trait, and that's how I'm associated by learning about it. But if it is in terms of the appearance, for children who are not treated properly, there would be a difference that you would see, because their limbs, they end up with shorter torsos, they don't develop properly. They would have expansion of the bones, and because your marrow working in the bones itself will cause the bone to swell. So you do get some deformation if it is that they don't get proper treatment. So in some parts of the world, you can identify them with a larger stomach because the spleen is swelling, the spleen is overworking, so it swells out, so things like that. But if the person is properly treated from birth, there's no physical appearance that would be able to tell that that they can do anything. They can, once they are not affected with the other conditions, they can do anything they want to do. We have people with thalassemia major in every field. We can proudly boast to say that. We have models, we have doctors, lawyers, everything.
But I think that's because in the UK we have proper treatment.
Right.
And that makes a difference.
And awareness, perhaps, or probably you are still working towards awareness.
We try our best, but we do have awareness, and we work very closely with the NHS and the doctors and the commissioners to try to make sure that treatment's available throughout the country. But I think we are very lucky in our society to be able to have the chance to live
great
a normal life.
I understand that. I mean, we've been talking about major and minor, but understand there are 3 types of thalassemia, right? And what are those?
So thalassemia minor is one, which is the trait. There's thalassemia intermediate, where you produce some hemoglobin, but not. In some cases, you produce enough to sustain you, but in some cases you don't, and then you need regular transfusions, like I have. And then you have thalassemia major, where you're completely reliant on blood transfusions. So those are the 3 types.
How dangerous is it? I mean, this is. Listening to you, I understand that it seems like it's quite common, and anybody can have this and suffer or inherit it from their parents. But is it really dangerous?
Well, to live with the condition, when you have the full-blown condition, it's life-threatening if you're not treated properly. So that's where, that's where the dangerous bits come into. If you have the trait, it's not dangerous in that sense. It's just when you pass that on and the child becomes when the child develops the full condition. Having the trait is not dangerous as such, but the full-blown condition, you will die if you're not treated, and that is very dangerous.
How can somebody understand that this person is suffering from thalassemia? If I look at somebody,
you won't tell, unless you have very physical deformities and things.
As Romain was saying, yes.
Yeah, that's when you will tell. But lots of my friends who have the condition, they look very much like I am. You can't really tell if you just look at them. In terms of if you're a carrier and you don't know whether you carry it or not, to find out, you have to do a blood test that's available from the GP, or you can contact our office and we help. And that's how they identify. And I can tell you, I have people in my family and relatives who when they were getting married and having children, and my parents said to them, you need to be tested, and they said, well, your bad luck won't be my bad luck. And then their child was born with it. So
let's
have this going on.
Let's be positive and think of good luck and
no, but it's not, and I don't think it's bad luck at all.
So now we need to take a break, and then when we come back we will talk more about it. Okay? Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Don't go away, we'll be back soon. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking to our young guest today about thalassemia and whether it can be easily detected and what does it do to a person's life. And our senior guest suggested that there can be physical traits or physical features of a person that can tell you, but without going into the detail that some of the myths, it is not detectable, is it? Thalassemia?
So the trait sometimes is not, you can't physically see it.
Yeah.
Some of the other myths is that it's contagious. It's like a virus, and it's not contagious.
It's not contagious.
You can't catch it like COVID or the cold.
Or COVID.
Yeah, you can't catch it. It's inherited. Some of the others is that you are yellow and
yeah, but that's jaundiced view of the whole thing.
Yeah, but that's if you don't get treated.
Yeah.
And that you have bad blood.
Yeah.
Then some of the myths is that you treat it by taking out iron supplements, and we've also had some where they said that you have a bad omen on you. I don't know what it's called, in the Caribbean. It's so you have a bad eye and you have to do certain prayers, and there's lots of things like that you hear about.
Yep.
And it's not true.
Well, that's a myth. Is a myth.
It is a myth.
Is it true that people with this disorder particularly, should not marry each other?
So I wouldn't say they don't marry each other. I think so in the NHS, they have things like genetic counselling. So if you're thinking about having a child and you both have the trait, you meet the genetic counsellor, and then they're able to do things like IVF and other methods. So you have a child without the condition I have. So I won't say don't marry each other, but I would say be cautious. If you know you have the trait, go to the NHS, go to the GP, and go through genetic counselling.
Are some communities more likely to have this disorder for any particular, for geographical reason, for their lifestyle, for what they eat, how they live?
Not really. What we have seen especially in the UK presently, is that the communities that we're having new births are in the ones that are not really paying attention to the outreach programs that we're doing or the information, and they go ahead and have a child without testing.
It's lack of awareness.
It is the biggest hurdle we have to face in most communities basically the awareness campaigns of them not, thinking your problem is not mine. It wouldn't affect me. I'll just be quiet and it's up to God. It is more than that. I firmly believe that you get messages so that you can check, in order to avoid. It's a simple blood test. That's all they need to do.
Or that you have an informed decision. So if you know you're going to have a child, it's not like a surprise to you and you're not just thrown into it, but you learn about the condition before and you decide what your future in some sense. And I think in the Asian population, right now, that makes up 97% of the new births in England. And that's quite a huge number. Yes. So and we have lots of people who, go to like Pakistan and Bangladesh and they get married and they come back and there's no testing. And that's where we have an issue. And I think people need to talk to each other a little bit more. It's not, having a condition or having a trait doesn't make you less of a human. You're just as, you're normal, you're fine. And I think having those conversations and saying, I have this, you could have it too. And everybody testing and knowing about that, I think it can save the population.
But in many communities, particularly I'm talking about other countries, it is not possible for everybody to go and have a test, because first of all, it may not be available there in that country, and secondly, it may be very expensive, so it will put off a lot of people.
But if you look, to be frank about this, if you look at what a test costs to at least know if you have the trait,
right,
as against when you have a child and you have to find funding for transfusions in other countries, medication which is not available in most countries and have to be imported, and the general treatment, because it affects your eyes, it affects your hearing, your bones, your teeth, every single part of your body is affected, even though you're being transfused. So when you look at that whole cost holistically, you'd find that it's simpler and it's easier on everybody concerned, at least to know before, so that you could have your children, but have no healthy children without the condition, rather than having a child with the full-blown condition and then having to face everything that comes with it. The heartbreak of having to take a baby in and for them to try to find veins, and you see them struggling and sticking all over the child, I've had one family that, they were told they had the trait here in the UK, and they opted to not check the child to see. And then when the child was born, they came to us in tears. They could not deal with it. It's difficult watching a young baby be cannulated, and having to go into the hospital 3 and 4 times a month to keep monitoring your blood levels and to see what else is, happening with the child. It's not just a simple, okay, you have something, get on with it. It's not that easy at all.
And the thing is, life expectancy for people with my condition is a lot lower than the general public. So somebody from an Asian background with thalassemia, your life expectancy could be between 30 to sort of 40 something years, and that's what it is. And it's even lower if you have other conditions. I've lost friends who were 20, and 25 and younger because of how, the complications of thalassemia. So you might see me here and I look fine, but internally, you won't know what's happening.
True.
And that's the thing. So sometimes it's better to know. I always believe in informed decision making and informed knowledge. And these are things. So in some of the countries with the society, so like in Bangladesh, they have their society, and they can help people to direct them on how to get testing. And lots of times it's free to do the testing, so it is available. It's just that people don't some people don't want to know, and that's fair enough. But I think in the young population now, they are more informed. We have the internet, everybody's, they want to know. So it's just finding out how to get that information from a reliable source and to do it.
Well, I met a lady yesterday and I was talking about this, and she said that I did not know the name of this disease, but I know somebody who suffers something like this that you're talking about, And to tell you the truth, that I did not even think that somebody could suffer, that I have known that lady for some time, so could suffer, and without her own knowledge that she does suffer like this, and she goes to doctor, and I hope that she gets over it and she is treated properly. But do you have your chapters in other countries, like your organizations?
We work with societies internationally. And like Rana said, in Bangladesh, we are in contact with the society there. The issue is thalassemia is a very difficult word to pronounce, much less spell. So it takes somebody a while to even be able to say the word properly. And that in itself is a drawback.
Why don't we adopt a shorter word for this?
So I think I don't know what it's called in Bangladesh, but they do have a short like it's shortened and it's in a different way that they say it, but it's like thalassemia or something they say, but it's a Greek. So thalassemia is a Greek word, and it means like anemia, which is a less of it, and like a sea of red cells is a lack of red cells, and that's what the word originated from.
Something like Bohemia.
Yeah, I think that like we need something. I think we do need something that is quite short and
easy to understand and easy to pronounce, so that everybody can use it. You mentioned the thalassemia major and thalassemia minor. See, can you just go into detail about that?
So thalassemia minor is when you carry the trait. It's not a condition, but it's just you're a carrier. So you have a normal copy of this hemoglobin.
How would somebody know that he's carrying?
So you won't really know. You might feel anemic, you might be pale, but you only find out with the blood test. So you carry it silently. And that's how you find out about it.
Is there a treatment for that, minor?
There is not, because you don't have a condition.
Right.
Just that you produce smaller red cells. So that's why you might be a little more tired and you might be a little more anemic. They don't get blood transfusions for having a carrier status, because it's not a condition.
No extra food, no
we tell people to eat, again, healthy diet, no smoking, eat spinach to make sure that you build up on those hemoglobin and you use the iron to make that a healthy diet.
That did very well for Popeye, but
I don't think Popeye had an iron deficiency problem at all. I think his hemoglobin levels were great. And with major, that's the condition, and that's what you inherit from both parents, and that's the one you need regular blood transfusions and lots of other types of treatment.
I may be repeating myself, but can a carrier be treated?
No, so carrier doesn't need any treatment. They just carry some, so they still produce lots of normal hemoglobin. It's just that they might produce slightly less. Their hemoglobin levels might be lower than the general population, but it's not low enough to need transfusions. They live healthy lives.
Can a carrier pass it on to others?
The carrier can pass it on to their children, and that's how their children can develop the full-blown condition if both parents are carriers. Both parents pass it on. But the carriers, their life expectancy is normal. It's just when you have a child with the condition that's inherited 2 copies of those genes, that's when you have severe issues to deal with.
What is the percentage or the likelihood of 2 persons having this disorder, having a child with this disorder?
In some communities, it's like 1 in 4, 1 in 7 people carry it from certain communities. If 2 parents are carriers, there's 50% chance that in each pregnancy the child could be a carrier. There's 25% chance that the child could have the major form of the condition like I do, and there's a 25% chance that they inherit like normal copies of the hemoglobin module and they don't have any carrier status. So each pregnancy there's a 1 in 4 that they can have what I have.
Is there any precaution that they can take before they start thinking of starting a family?
So we say to have a blood test and find out whether you carry the trait. You can have it, you can pass it on to anybody. You wouldn't feel unwell, and that's the first thing we say. And if you do have if you are a carrier and your spouse is a carrier, then you go off and do genetic counseling and things like that, and then they will help you to plan your family and to ensure that they're as healthy as possible.
I think it's also important to explain that people, even though they had children before, they could have been fortunate that the children, they passed on just the carrier status, so no, the normal gene. But we have had families in our society that the 4th child ended up to be the major form, or the 3rd child. So it doesn't mean that if you've had a child before and you feel okay, there's nothing in the family, that it's not there. there's a specific blood test you do. It's not just a normal test. You go to the GP. It's something you have to ask for in screening your genes.
And that is available on NHS.
So it is. And right now, in the NHS has a screening program for thalassemia, and they screen all pregnant women in England for the gene. And they do that by the time they're 10 weeks and 10 weeks and 6 days pregnant. And then if the mother has a thalassemia gene, then they test the father and they go on to test the baby.
Right. Could you pick up some of the material that you have brought and show our viewers? Yep.
So this
Like this magazine that you have.
We produce those magazines one every quarter, and we basically give an update of what we do in the society, as well as we also make sure that we have a medical corner, a screening corner, to give information, as to how people can work with us, understand what we do in terms of research. And
So
There's
all
things
that.
like
it
diet.
says autumn, so that means you don't produce it every month. It probably comes out-
Quarterly. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 times a year. And then, this is one of our awareness program posters, and it shows the kind of regions of the world where it's very prevalent, where the gene
Right,
is very prevalent.
right.
So that's where we tell people, if you come from certain areas, you should test.
Well, it looks like only the warm areas in the world.
So and those are like the malaria prone regions, and that's how it was developed.
They don't have it in China or Russia.
They do have it in China, actually. They have it quite a lot in China. And these
Okay.
are just some of our patients with the condition.
Okay, thank you for coming along and talking about this very serious, but I would like it to be uncommon and dangerous as well. Thank you very much for coming along,
Thank you for
Thank you
having
for
us.
having us.
and thank you viewers for being with us, and we hope that you enjoyed the show as much as we have in producing it. Same time, same channel, next week. See you again.